The streets were crowded and noisy, but she moved through them like she belonged there. People jostled past her, shouting, laughing, or arguing, and the air smelled of fried food, rain, and dust. She had learned to keep her head down and her eyes sharp. Life had not been kind, and she knew that if she wanted to survive, she had to be careful, clever, and fast. Her small hands clutched a worn-out bag that contained her meager belongings. Clothes that were too big for her hung loosely on her frame, and her shoes were old and patched in several places. But her eyes were bright, alive with curiosity and determination. Most days, people overlooked her. They assumed she was just another child from the neighborhood, nothing special. They didn't see her bravery or the fire that burned quietly inside her. She moved past the market, where vendors shouted prices and waved their hands to get attention. Fruit spilled out of baskets in vibrant reds, yellows, and oranges, and she paused to look at them for a moment, savoring the colors even if she couldn't afford them. Then she hurried along, remembering that she had errands to finish before the sun disappeared behind the tall, grimy buildings. Her life had been lonely for as long as she could remember. She had lost her parents when she was very young, and since then the world had been a series of challenges she had to face alone. Sometimes she wished for someone to talk to, someone who would care about her not just because she needed help, but because they wanted to. But wishing didn't change anything, and she had learned to rely on herself. She had a small group of friends in the neighborhood, kids who were also trying to survive. They shared stories, food, and laughter when they could, and those moments felt like tiny lights in a dark room. But even among friends, she was independent. She didn't ask for much, didn't complain, and always found ways to make life a little easier for herself. That afternoon, the clouds were heavy and gray, and a light drizzle began to fall. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders and walked faster, hoping to get home before the rain became heavy. The streets were slippery and puddles reflected the dull sky. Every sound seemed louder: the splash of water, the honking of cars, the shouting of people selling goods. As she turned a corner, she heard a sudden, sharp crash. It was loud, violent, and completely out of place. She froze for a moment, her heart hammering. Then she saw it. A car had hit a tree, smoke rising from the hood and glass scattered across the wet pavement. The driver's side door was dented and the car's lights flickered in the rain. Her instincts kicked in immediately. She didn't think about what could happen to her. She only thought about the person inside. Without hesitation, she ran toward the car. The street was almost empty now, people having run away from the noise, and she had the courage to face the danger alone. The door was stuck, but she pushed with all her strength. It finally gave way, and she saw him, an old man slumped over the steering wheel, barely moving. His face was pale and his breathing was shallow. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had helped others before in small ways, but nothing like this. She pulled at his arm gently, whispering for him to wake up. "It's okay. I'm here. You'll be okay," she said, even though her voice shook. She wasn't sure if he could hear her, but she had to try. She wrapped her arms around him carefully, lifting him as best as she could. The car smelled of smoke and oil, and the rain made the metal slippery. But she didn't let go. By the time she managed to drag him a few feet away from the car, her clothes were soaked, her hands cut from broken glass, and her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. She looked around for help, shouting for anyone nearby. "Somebody help, please." Her voice echoed off the walls of the buildings, but no one appeared. She realized she had to do something else. She ran to a nearby corner store where a man was watching the rain, and shouted for him to call an ambulance. He hesitated at first, shocked to see a young girl drenched and determined, but then he fumbled for his phone and dialed quickly. She ran back to the old man, holding his head in her lap, trying to keep him warm and conscious. The minutes felt endless, but finally, the sound of sirens approached. The paramedics arrived, moving quickly through the rain. She explained what had happened, where the man had been, and how she had pulled him out. They nodded, impressed and a little surprised that a child had acted so bravely. She didn't wait to hear praise. Her mind was on him, hoping he would survive. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, the old man stirred slightly. His eyes opened just a little, and he looked at her. She smiled, exhausted and wet, and whispered, "You're going to be okay. Don't worry." He tried to respond but could only croak out a weak sound. She held his hand until they put him in the ambulance, then stepped back, letting the professionals take over. She stood in the rain, dripping and shivering, but she didn't feel afraid anymore. Something inside her had shifted. She had faced danger and acted without thinking about herself. She had saved a life, and though she didn't know who he was or what would happen next, she felt proud, stronger than she had ever felt before. Walking home slowly, she thought about how strange life could be. One moment she was just another child in the crowd, and the next, she had been at the center of something important, something that mattered. She didn't know that the man she had saved was no ordinary person, that he was someone powerful, wealthy, and influential. For her, it was just a life saved, a person helped, and that was enough. Back in her small, cramped room that evening, she cleaned her cuts, changed her wet clothes, and sat by the window, looking at the street below. The rain had stopped, leaving everything shiny and wet. The city looked different in the soft glow of the streetlights, and she felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe life wasn't just about surviving. Maybe, just maybe, something good could happen to her too. She closed her eyes and imagined a future where she could help more people, where her courage could mean something bigger. But for now, she had survived another day, faced danger, and come out stronger. And even if no one knew it, even if no one thanked her, she knew that in that moment she had done something extraordinary. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency, a world very different from the noisy streets she was used to. She hesitated at the entrance for a moment, unsure if she belonged there, unsure if anyone would even let her in. But she had to know how he was. She had risked herself in the rain and mud to save him, and now she needed to see if he was alive. The nurses were busy, moving from one patient to another, speaking in quick tones that she didn't always understand. She stepped forward politely, her small frame almost disappearing in the bright white hallway. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm here to see the man who was in the car accident earlier today." A nurse looked at her, slightly surprised. "Do you know him?" she asked. "Yes," she said. "I helped him. I pulled him out of the car." Her voice was quiet, but there was a strange confidence in it, a pride in what she had done. The nurse's eyes softened, and she nodded. "You did the right thing. You saved his life. You can see him, but only for a short time." She led the girl through a maze of corridors until they reached a private room. The old man lay in a hospital bed, machines beeping softly around him, an oxygen mask over his face. He looked fragile, pale and worn, a stark contrast to the powerful presence she had imagined from the few glimpses she had seen in the street. Her heart ached when she saw him like this. The man she had dragged from the wreckage, the man who had seemed so far away from her world, was just a human being, vulnerable and frightened like anyone else. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, not touching him at first, unsure if he would wake up or even remember her. Minutes passed, quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the hum of the air conditioner. Then slowly his eyes fluttered open. They were clouded with confusion at first, but then recognition came, even if faint. He tried to speak, and though his voice was weak, he managed to whisper, "You saved me?" She nodded, smiling despite the anxiety in her chest. "Yes, I did." "Don't worry, you're safe now." For the first time she noticed something in his eyes, a mixture of gratitude, surprise, and curiosity. He looked at her as if he had never seen someone like her before, and yet he wasn't scared. There was a quiet respect there, something deeper than words could explain. The nurse came in briefly, checking his vitals and nodding at her. "You can stay for a little while, but then you'll need to go home. He needs rest." She offered a reassuring smile before leaving. The girl remained, watching the old man. She realized she didn't know his name, where he came from, or what his life was like. She didn't care. Right now, all that mattered was that he was alive, breathing, and that she had been there when it counted. Over the next few days, she visited whenever she could. She didn't have much, and sometimes she had to sneak in between errands or school, but she never missed a chance to see him. She brought small gifts, a drawing she had made, a flower she had picked on the way to the hospital, anything to make him smile. And he did. Slowly, he began to recover. His face regained some color, and he started speaking more clearly. He told her small stories, funny and sad, about things he remembered from his life. The girl listened, fascinated by the words, the tone, and the life behind them. It was strange for her to hear someone talk so freely, someone who had everything she didn't yet understand about the world. He asked about her too, though not in a way that felt like pity. He asked about her life, her neighborhood, her school, and what she dreamed about. She told him in small pieces, never revealing everything, but enough to show that her world was hard. sometimes cruel but also filled with hope, laughter, and small victories. He began to notice things about her courage, her intelligence, her kindness, the way she didn't complain even when things were hard, the way she treated everyone around her with respect, even if they had nothing to give her. He had met many people in his life, but she was different. There was something pure in her bravery, something unshakable even in the face of fear and danger. One afternoon, as the rain tapped gently against the window, he looked at her with a soft smile. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "Not just courage, but heart. You see the world differently, and that's rare." "Very rare," the girl blushed, looking down at her hands. Compliments weren't common for her, and she didn't know how to respond. "I just did what I had to," she said, shrugging slightly. "I didn't want anything to happen to you." He nodded as if he understood exactly what she meant. "I know," he said, "and that's why I want to know you better. I want to help you in ways you don't even imagine yet. But I want you to know, it's because of who you are, not because of what you did for me." She didn't fully understand. Help from him? He was old, fragile, and clearly someone important. But in her world, help like that came with strings attached, expectations or conditions. She had learned to be wary. Yet there was a sincerity in his eyes, a kind of honesty that she hadn't seen in a long time. Over time, a bond formed between them. She came to see him as more than a man she had saved. He became a mentor of sorts, someone who listened, who shared wisdom without judgment, and who encouraged her to believe in herself. She still returned to her old neighborhood, still faced the challenges of life without her parents. But now she carried a secret strength, a connection that made her feel a little less alone. One day, as she sat beside his bed, she asked quietly, "Why me? Why did you let me stay here and talk to you?" He smiled, eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and respect. "Because you remind me of what's important. You remind me of courage that comes naturally without thinking about reward. You remind me of honesty, kindness, and the strength of the human spirit. Those are things I have seen too little of in my life." Her chest swelled with a mix of pride and disbelief. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She felt seen, truly seen, not for her struggle or her mistakes, but for who she was inside. As days turned into weeks, his health improved, and the conversations between them deepened. They talked about dreams, about fears, and about life. She shared small stories about her past, about the streets, her friends, and the little things that made her happy. He shared lessons from his life, stories of hardship, success, and regret, always careful to speak in ways she could understand. In those moments, she began to see that life was bigger than the narrow world she had known. There were possibilities she hadn't dared to imagine, and she realized that the courage she had shown in the rain that day was only the beginning. And all the while, he watched her quietly planning ways to help her, to give her opportunities she couldn't even dream of yet. He didn't reveal everything, not yet, but he knew that her bravery and her heart were precious, rare, and worth nurturing. The girl left the hospital each day with a mix of exhaustion and wonder. She had saved a life, yes, but in return she had found a connection that made her feel hope for the first time in a long while. She didn't know that the man she had saved was a billionaire, that his world was filled with wealth, influence, and power. All she knew was that he had trusted her, valued her, and that she mattered to someone in a way she had never imagined. And in that simple understanding, she felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten, that life could change, that kindness mattered, and that sometimes courage led to the most unexpected and beautiful beginnings. The girl had begun to visit the hospital more regularly, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely cared. Each time she entered the quiet room, she felt a strange mix of nervousness and warmth. The old man was recovering slowly, but his eyes always lit up when he saw her. There was something in those eyes that made her feel safe, even in a place so different from the streets she knew. At first, their conversations were short, simple, and cautious. She would ask him about his day, and he would ask her about hers. Sometimes they would sit in silence, listening to the faint beeps of the machines and the distant chatter of nurses. But over time, the walls between them began to shrink. She began to speak more openly, sharing small details about her life, how she got her meals, what her friends were up to, the little moments of joy and struggle that colored her days. He listened carefully, asking questions not out of curiosity alone, but with genuine interest. He wanted to understand her world, to see life through her eyes. He noticed the little things, how she always helped other children even when she had so little herself, how she never complained about hunger or cold, even though it must have been exhausting, how she carried herself with quiet dignity, refusing to let the hardships define her. One afternoon, as the rain poured against the hospital windows, he spoke in a quiet, reflective tone. "You have a strength that most people never find," he said. "You carry the world on your shoulders, yet you still notice the small things. You care when others wouldn't. That is a rare gift." She looked at him, startled. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Most people either ignored her or looked at her as if she were less than them. But he didn't. He saw her, truly saw her, and for the first time she felt a spark of pride that wasn't mixed with fear or shame. "I just do what I have to," she said softly. "I don't know if it's strong or special. It's just life." He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "Life doesn't make people strong. Choices do. And you made a choice that saved my life. But more than that, the choices you make every day, the way you treat the world and the people in it, that is real strength." His words settled in her mind like seeds planted in soil. She had never thought of herself in those terms. She had survived, yes, but surviving was different from being strong, different from being someone who could shape her own future. She began to see herself differently, and for the first time the idea that her life could change started to take root. The old man, for his part, watched her closely. He remembered the moment she had pulled him from the wreck, drenched and bleeding but determined. He remembered her courage, her quick thinking, and her refusal to be afraid. And as he recovered, he realized something important. She was not just brave, she was exceptional. He began to think about the ways he could help her, to give her opportunities she had never imagined. But he was careful. He knew that throwing wealth and power at someone who had lived a hard life could do more harm than good. He wanted to help her, yes, but he also wanted to respect her dignity, her independence, and her spirit. Over the next few weeks, their conversations grew deeper. He shared stories from his own past, some of success, some of mistakes, and some of regrets. She listened with wide eyes, absorbing the lessons hidden in his words. She began to understand that life was bigger than the streets she knew, bigger than her daily struggles, and full of possibilities she had never dared to imagine. In return, she shared parts of her own life that she rarely told anyone. She spoke of her parents, of the memories she kept alive in her mind, and of the loneliness that had shaped her into the person she had become. She told him about her friends, the small joys and big challenges of surviving day to day, and her dreams, tiny, fragile things that seemed impossible but that she still clung to. He listened patiently, never judging, never pitying, and in those moments she began to trust him. She began to see that he cared, truly cared, not because of what she had done but because of who she was. That trust grew slowly like a fragile plant nurtured carefully, until she felt a comfort she had not known in years. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed weakly through the hospital windows, he reached out and gently took her hand. "I want to make something very clear," he said. "I don't see you as someone who needs saving. I see you as someone who has already saved me, in more ways than you can imagine. Your courage, your heart, it has changed something in me. And now I want to help you, but only if you are willing to accept it on your own terms." She looked down at their hands, her mind racing. Help from him? She had never known anyone to offer help like that without expecting something in return. And yet in his eyes there was nothing but honesty, nothing but genuine care. She felt a flicker of hope, a tiny voice telling her that maybe, just maybe, life could be different. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why would you care about someone like me?" He smiled softly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Because you are rare. You are brave, kind, and true. You see the world clearly, and you act with courage even when it's hard. I have met many people in my life, but very few have touched me in the way you have. And that matters. More than anything else, that matters." Her chest tightened, a mix of emotions she could not name. She felt pride, fear, wonder, and disbelief all at once. For so long she had been invisible, overlooked, and underestimated. And now here was someone seeing her fully, valuing her, recognizing her worth. It was overwhelming but also beautiful. From that day forward, their bond deepened. She began to visit him not just out of curiosity, but because she wanted to. She wanted to hear his stories, share her own, and feel the strange comfort that came from someone truly understanding her. He became a source of guidance, not in a strict or demanding way, but in a gentle, encouraging manner. And she began to imagine possibilities she had never dared to consider. She imagined learning more, going to better schools, meeting new people, and exploring a world far larger than her neighborhood. She began to dream again, carefully at first, then with more confidence, feeling that maybe life could be more than survival. The old man noticed every small change in her. He saw how her posture grew a little taller, how her eyes shone a little brighter, and how her laughter returned, soft but genuine. He realized that her courage had not only saved his life, but had awakened something in both of them. He wanted to nurture that spark, to help her grow without taking away her independence or the values that made her who she was. One evening, as she prepared to leave, he called her back gently. "Remember," he said, "your courage is yours. Your heart is yours. And no matter what happens, those things can never be taken from you. Hold on to them and they will guide you through everything." She nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and awe. She didn't fully understand what the future held, but she knew that her life had shifted in ways she couldn't yet see. She had saved a life, yes, but in doing so, she had also opened a door to possibilities she had never imagined. And as she walked home through the familiar streets, wet and tired, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, not the fragile kind that disappears at the first sign of trouble, but a quiet, steady hope rooted in courage, kindness, and the unexpected power of one act of bravery. The days after the old man's recovery passed quickly, and with each visit, the girl noticed subtle changes in him. He seemed more at peace, calmer, almost lighter in spirit, as if her presence had brought a part of life back into him, and he began to show her that he wanted to do more than just thank her for saving him. He wanted to offer her a chance to change her life. One quiet afternoon, she sat beside his bed, her legs dangling over the side of the chair. The rain tapped softly against the window, and the hospital was filled with that familiar mix of antiseptic and low murmurs. He looked at her thoughtfully, then leaned back, hands folded gently on the blanket. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what you have done for me. Not just the rescue, but the way you live your life. You carry courage, heart, and kindness that most people lose along the way. I want to help you, not as a favor, but as an opportunity." She blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly.
"Help me?"
she asked quietly, a mix of suspicion and hope in her voice. "Help? I don't—" He smiled, patient and gentle. "Not by giving you money or things you don't need. I want to give you education, guidance, and the chance to grow. I want to make sure your courage and heart can take you far, beyond this neighborhood, beyond the struggles you face every day." She hesitated. Help like that was unfamiliar. In her world, offers often came with strings attached, with expectations she could not meet. She had learned to say no to what she didn't fully trust. Yet something about his tone, his calmness, and his unwavering eyes told her that this was different. "Why would you do this?" she asked softly. "I'm just me. I didn't ask for this." He shook his head gently. "That is exactly why. You didn't ask. You acted from the heart. That is rare. That is why I want to offer you a choice. You decide what to take, what to accept. Nothing will be forced on you." For a moment she thought about it. The idea of leaving her life, even for better opportunities, was terrifying. She had lived on her own for so long that independence, though hard, was all she had known. But at the same time, a tiny spark ignited inside her, a vision of a life she had never dared to imagine. "Where would I go?" she asked hesitantly. "I can arrange a school for you, tutoring, and a safe place to live. You can continue to visit your neighborhood and your friends, but you will also have a chance to learn, to grow, to explore what life can be beyond survival. You will have choices and you will guide your own path." She was silent for a long time, the words sinking in. She thought about the crowded, noisy streets she called home, the little meals she scavenged, the cold nights she endured. She thought about the friends she loved and the loneliness she carried. And then she thought about herself, not just surviving, but living, dreaming, and becoming more than the sum of her struggles. Slowly she nodded. I want to try," she said softly, almost in disbelief that she had said it. His eyes brightened and he reached out to gently squeeze her hand. "That is all I ask. That is all anyone could ask. Courage, heart, and the willingness to grow. You already have the first two. The last one is yours to embrace." In the following days, he began introducing her to a small team of tutors and mentors who would help her catch up on her studies and expand her skills. She met people who treated her as a student, as a young mind with potential, not as a child from the streets. At first she felt awkward, unsure, and even out of place. But each day as she learned new things, practiced reading and math, and discussed her dreams, she began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known. He visited her regularly, not just to check on her but to share stories, advice, and encouragement. Sometimes they would sit quietly, talking about life, dreams, and the small joys of the world. Other times he would challenge her, asking questions that made her think deeply and reflect on herself. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet garden outside the hospital, he asked, "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" She looked up, curious. "I see someone who refuses to be broken by the world, someone who faces fear, danger, and hardship, and yet never loses the heart that makes life worth living. That is why I believe in you. That is why I want to help you grow." She felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Words had power, and his words stirred something inside her, a mixture of pride, hope, and the first tiny taste of confidence. Over the next few weeks, life began to shift for her. She had a small, safe room to sleep in, books to study, and guidance to help her navigate this new world. At first, she worried that she was leaving her friends and her neighborhood behind. But he reminded her gently, "You do not leave them behind. You grow and you can bring back what you learned to help others. Courage and heart are not limited to one place. They can spread." She began to see that opportunity wasn't about abandoning her past. It was about building a future that could honor it. The struggles she had faced were not wasted. They had made her strong, resilient, and empathetic. And now, with guidance and support, she could use those strengths to create a life she had only dreamed about. One evening, she sat by the window of her new room, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. She thought about how far she had come, from running through crowded streets, surviving on scraps, to sitting here with a chance to learn, grow, and change her life. It felt unreal, but it was real, and she embraced it. The old man watched her quietly during her visits, noting her curiosity, her resilience, and her gradual transformation. He saw the way she listened, learned, and began to imagine possibilities. He understood that true change would not happen overnight, but he was patient. He knew that with encouragement, opportunity, and her own courage, she could achieve more than she could ever imagine. He also understood that wealth alone could not change a person's life. It was the guidance, the choices, and the belief in oneself that mattered most, and he wanted to give her all of that, without pressure, without expectation, without strings attached. One afternoon, he handed her a small notebook. "Write your dreams," he said. "Write the things you hope for, the things you want to learn, the places you want to see. Keep it safe and revisit it often. It will help you remember who you are, what you value, and where you want to go." She took it, feeling its weight in her hands. It was not just a notebook, it was a symbol of trust, possibility, and hope. She began to write carefully, pouring her thoughts onto the pages. Dreams she had whispered to herself in secret were now written down, real and tangible. That night, as she lay in her small bed, she thought about the man who had saved her life, and whom she had saved in return in his own way. She thought about courage, kindness, and the unexpected ways life could change. She realized that this opportunity was more than just a gift. It was a chance to honor her own heart, her bravery, and the lessons she had learned on the streets. And in that realization, a quiet strength settled inside her. She was ready to embrace the journey ahead, to learn, grow, and face whatever challenges would come her way. She knew life would not be easy, but she also knew that she was not alone. She had someone who believed in her, and more importantly, she had begun to believe in herself. The days turned into weeks, and the girl began to feel a change within herself. Life was no longer just about surviving day by day. She had routines, responsibilities, and most importantly, hope. Every morning, she woke up in her small, safe room, sunlight streaming through the window, and she felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. Her studies became a part of her life. She met tutors who encouraged her to ask questions, to explore ideas, and to challenge herself. Subjects she had once thought impossible slowly became understandable, and with each lesson she grew more confident. She found that learning was not just about memorizing facts. It was about discovering the world and her own ability to navigate it. The old man continued to guide her, but now in subtle ways. He did not give instructions. He asked questions. "What do you want to do with what you learn?" He would ask. "How do you imagine your future?" Sometimes she didn't know the answers, and sometimes she dreamed aloud, imagining possibilities she had never dared to consider before. She began to see that life had more layers than she had known. The streets where she had struggled, the crowded markets, and the friends she had grown up with, all of it had shaped her. But now she had the chance to take those lessons and use them to move forward. She was learning that courage and heart were not just qualities that saved lives. They were qualities that could build a future. With each passing week, she felt herself changing. She walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and began to believe that she deserved more than just survival. She learned that the world was not just a place of hardship, but also of opportunity, kindness, and possibilities waiting to be discovered. The old man noticed the transformation as well. He saw the spark in her eyes when she solved a problem, the joy in her laughter when she discovered something new, and the determination in her steps when she moved through the streets of her neighborhood with pride. He had always believed in her, but now she was beginning to believe in herself, and that was the most important gift he could have given her. She also started sharing her knowledge and experiences with her friends back home. She taught them small lessons she had learned, helped them with reading or basic math, and shared stories of hope and courage. They listened, sometimes skeptical, sometimes amazed, but slowly they began to see that their friend had changed, and that maybe they too could imagine something more for themselves. One afternoon, as she walked through the quiet streets she had known so well, she thought about how far she had come. She remembered the rainy day when she had pulled the old man from the wrecked car, the fear, the determination, and the strange mix of panic and courage that had carried her through. She realized that one small act of bravery had set all of this in motion. Her life had changed, not because she was powerful or rich, but because she had chosen to act with heart. The old man had been right. Courage and heart were powerful. They had brought her safety, opportunity, and belief in herself. And now as she looked around, she could see that her world was not just about challenges. It was about choices, growth, and the people who believed in her. She began to dream bigger. She imagined finishing her education, helping other children like herself, and using her experiences to make a difference. She imagined a future where her courage and kindness could ripple out into the world, touching lives and creating opportunities for those who had none. Her relationship with the old man deepened as well. He was no longer just a mentor or a benefactor. He became a true friend, someone who understood her, respected her, and inspired her to see herself in a new light. They laughed together, shared stories, and sometimes sat in silence, simply enjoying each other's presence. She had never known such a connection before, and it felt comforting, grounding, and empowering all at once. As the months passed, she embraced her new life fully. She continued to visit her old neighborhood, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She helped her friends, offered advice, and showed them that change was possible. She carried herself with confidence, humility, and kindness, inspiring those around her simply by being herself. The old man watched her quietly, proud and content. He had never expected such a transformation to happen so quickly, but he also knew that it was her own strength, determination, and heart that had made it possible. His support had opened doors, but she had walked through them on her own, embracing every challenge and opportunity with courage. One evening, as the sun set over the city, she sat by the window of her small room, notebook in hand. She wrote down her dreams, her plans, and the lessons she had learned. She thought about her past, her struggles, and the moments of fear and uncertainty that had led her here. And she realized that every experience, every challenge, and every act of bravery had shaped her into the person she was becoming. She thought about the old man and smiled. He had saved her in ways she had never imagined, not with money or luxury, but with guidance, trust, and belief in her potential. And she had saved him too, in her own way, by reminding him of courage, kindness, and the power of the human heart. Her life was still full of challenges, but now she faced them with strength, knowledge, and hope. She understood that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. She understood that kindness and heart were treasures that could never be taken away, and she understood that her future was hers to shape, guided by the choices she made and the courage she carried. The girl had come a long way from the crowded streets she once called home. She had faced fear, danger and uncertainty, and emerged stronger, wiser, and full of hope. And as she looked toward the horizon, she knew that life had much more to offer. Opportunities, challenges, and moments of joy she had never imagined, and so, with courage in her heart and hope in her mind, she embraced the next chapter of her life. She had learned that a single act of bravery could change everything, that kindness and heart could open doors, and that the future belonged to those who dared to dream and act with courage. Her journey was only beginning, but she was ready. Ready to learn, ready to grow, ready to make a difference, and ready to live a life that honored the strength, bravery, and heart that had always been inside her. And as she stepped out into the world each day, she carried with her the knowledge that she was never truly alone, that her courage mattered, and that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple through life in ways she could never fully imagine. She smiled, thinking of all that lay ahead. Life had tested her, shaped her, and now it was hers to embrace.